8:30, Mr Mayor.
Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, I'll call the meeting to order and welcome everyone to the meeting tonight. I'll just go through the evacuation procedure. In the event of an emergency, the building may be evacuated. You will be required to vacate the building by the rear entrance and gather at the breezeway between the library and the art gallery buildings. This is Council's designated emergency muster point. Under no circumstances is anyone permitted to re-enter the building until all clear has been given and the area deemed safe by authorised personnel. In the event of an evacuation, a member of council staff will assist any member of the public with a disability to vacate the building. Item 1.1, apologies. There's none of those. No one's coming by Zoom. 1.2, this council meeting is being live streamed and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to be live streamed and recorded. Please ensure that if and when you speak at this council meeting that you ensure you are respectful to others and use appropriate language at all times. Orange City Council accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. A recording of this council meeting will be made for administrative purposes. Item 1.3 is acknowledgement of country. I would like to invite Wiradjuri Elder Uncle Neil Ingram to conduct a welcome to country.
Before welcome to country. First of all, I'd like to show my respect and acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Wiradjuri people, the ongoing care and connection to country. I acknowledge our elders past, present and future, elders who are present here today. Wiradjuri country is known as the land of the mountains, the plains and the three rivers. The three rivers are the Womble, Macquarie River near Dover, Lari or the Lachlan River near Forbes, and the Murrumbidgee or the Murrumbidgee River near Wagga Wagga. Wiradjuri country is one of the largest nations in New South Wales. It begins west of the Great Divide. Their southern boundary is the Millewa, Great Murray River near Albury. Welcome in language. Hey Gullibu, give me a bungbu. Hey Gullibu, Wambaladu Nickelki, Regiku, Nurumbaku. Welcome to Reggie, welcome to country. Manangu, thank you.
Thank you, Uncle Neil. I'll move on to item 1.4, which is declarations of interest. Does any councillor would want to declare an interest in any matter tonight? Councillor Kinghorn.
Yeah, just the usual. With the Planning and Development Committee, so item 2.3, my husband's company has done environmental work on that site in Ploughman's Lane, so I will not vote on that one.
Any other councillors wish to declare any interests? Thank you. I'll move on to item 1.5, which is the opening prayer, and we welcome Rosie Agalia of the Orange Buddhist Centre and ask her to lead us in the opening prayer.
Thank you for including us, minority in the area. Beautiful, compassionate prayer, and I sort of feel like I chose it because it's universal. It doesn't matter what religion you are or whether you're not religious. It's just very altruistic in its intention. So, His Holiness the Dalai Lama says this is a daily prayer. It's an extract from Shantideva's Way of Life of the Bodhisattva, being that comes to benefit all beings. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled, with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, and those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests, and may all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May those who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world.
Thank you very much for that, Rosie. The council meeting will now adjourn for the conduct of the open forum. We have 3 speakers. The first speaker being Mr. Cyril Smith, who's talking on Planning and Development Committee item 2.3, Development Application DA 406/2021, 267, 293 and 297 Ploughman's Lane. Mr. Smith. I'll just quickly introduce you to the councillors. I'll start here on my left. I have Councillor Whitten, Councillor Greenhalgh, Councillor McDonald, Deputy Mayor Councillor Power, Councillor Mallard, Councillor Peterson, Councillor Duffy, Councillor Floyd, Councillor Evans, Councillor Kinghorn and Councillor Miletto. You've got 5 minutes. Thanks, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors, for the chance to say a few words to you on this development application. Now, I did put in a submission, so if you'd like to see your notes on page 114, 115 is my short submission. And I don't plan to recite it again. I just want to make a couple of points of interest. And the first one probably is on page 67, where it refers to the public open space and a buffer zone of 20 metres from the road. Keeping in mind that Ploughman's Creek in that area is an Order 2 stream, and so there should be at least a 20-metre zone, buffer zone for the riparian zone. And I'm sure councillors that the staff would have taken that into account. It's interesting to note that in today's Guardian, there was an article about flying foxes, and in a park in Melbourne, they're allocating $180,000 to install sprinklers so the flying foxes can survive the summer and droughts much better. Orange being a progressive council, maybe it should be starting to think about the same sort of care for our natural environment. At the moment, I haven't seen the conditions of approval, and I would be interested to see them when they do come out, to see if most of my points raised are answered in the approval conditions. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Smith. Our next speaker is Uncle Neil Ingram, speaking on item 4.2, Notice of Motion, Recognition of Wiradjuri Country.
My name is Neil Ingram Senior. I'm a senior Wiradjuri elder. I've lived in Norwich for over 40 years. I am the founding chairperson member of the Garnet Bull Action Group. I'd like to thank Mr. Dave Waddell, the CEO of Norwich City Council, the opportunity to address Council tonight. I express my gratitude to Councillor Gerald Power, Deputy Mayor, for putting these motions forward to Council. It's ongoing support to the Aboriginal community of Norwich. It is greatly appreciated. Motion 1. Name Wiradjuri Country, the Norwich City Council letterhead. Aboriginal place name, simple but meaningful way to promote and celebrate Aboriginal community and culture. The Australian postal address is happening right throughout Australia. Good to think that this place had a name before colonisation. It's a great way to acknowledge and celebrate each area in Australia in its traditional name. I believe this will acknowledge and help celebrate the connection of First Nation people to these places. Incorporating Aboriginal place name will strengthen community connection, promote reconciliation in our community. Orange City Council is no stranger to using Aboriginal names. There's already been naming some of the facilities in Wiradjuri name, such as the Community Service Centre, Gilanganya, the Senior Citizen Centre, Wai Narang. The previous Orange City Council and Mayor rejected the motion to include the words Wiradjuri country on the basis that it would cause confusion. To use Wiradjuri country on the Orange City Council letterhead is a commitment to endorsing and recognising the Wiradjuri heritage of the land on which we stand. Motion number 2, naming Gunnabulla Mount Canobolas. September 2021, Elders and Gunnabulla Action Group applied for dual naming of Gunnabulla Mount Canobolas. This application is still pending, and tonight I ask Orange City Council to endorse and support the application. We are also seeking support from Cabonne Shire. Dual naming acknowledge and celebrate the connection of the First Nation to places. Dual naming represent irreplaceable cultural values of vital significance to people's sense of well-being. All Australians share a relationship to the land, and the names we give to places convey the significant sense of history and identity. Dual naming is becoming more commonly used around Australia. Geographical features already have traditional names used by Aboriginal community prior to European settlement. It is not only acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we live on, but seeks to incorporate 75,000 years of Aboriginal occupation, including our cultural knowledge, language and understanding into the mainstream consciousness. Mount Panorama is a good example of promoting dual naming. Geographical Name Board is committed to reawakening Aboriginal place names in New South Wales by encompassing both the use of Aboriginal language and the recognition of traditional Aboriginal names. Incorporating Aboriginal place names can strengthen community and promote reconciliation. The community of Origin need to recognise the dual names of Gunnabulla and Mount Canobolas, not be out of touch with the rest of Australia. Gunnabulla is a sacred and spiritual place for the Wiradjuri people in Origin and throughout Wiradjuri Nation. Wiradjuri country is the largest nation in South Wales. There is the Three Brothers story told by Uncle Neil Ingram, Wiradjuri elder. The Three Brothers dreaming story connects Walu, Mount Panorama, Gunnabulla, Mount Canobolas, and Goombalul Nilyana, Mount Mitchell. At the moment, the National Parks and Wildlife Service incorporating my dreaming story on the summit at Gunnabulla, Mount Canobolas. The artwork of my story is incorporated in the footpath, the summit, and my dreaming story will be on display nearby to the summit platform. It's easy viewing for those who visit. This is a goodwill gesture. allowing us to share a Wiradjuri Dreamer story with the wider community. And tonight, I seek support of those who are here and the support of Orange City Council. Bandang Gui, thank you very much.
Thank you, Uncle Neil. The next speaker is Mr. Ewan Greer on the same motion. Thanks, Ewan.
Good evening, councillors, staff and members of the public behind me. Thank you, especially to Uncle Neil, that I could not have done anywhere near well as making the case as you have already done. I'm going to cut my talk a little short. After the email that I sent all of you back at the beginning of June, it'll come as no surprise tonight that I'm here wholeheartedly to support Councillor Power's motion for the dual naming Gunnabulla Malkinobulis. I believe, as Neil has pointed out, that public acknowledgement or dual naming of Gunnabulla Malkinobulis be a very public acknowledgement by this council on behalf of the people of Orange of the custodianship by the Wiradjuri people for upwards of 70 millennia. That is 3,000 generations. White settlement of this country equates to something like 24. As Uncle Neil said, Council already uses Wiradjuri names, and by supporting the dual naming, it would be a much wider and more visible acknowledgement of the Aboriginal people's care of this wonderful land in which we all live and share. Just leave you with one final thought. The very word Aboriginal says it all. It comes from a Latin phrase, when translated means from the beginning. Councillors, I commend Councillor Power's motion to you, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Ewan. The council meeting will now resume. There's no more minutes. I'll move on to item number 3, and that is the confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 19th of July. Can I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Peterson, seconded by Councillor Kinghorn. Any comments? No comments. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Carried. The council meeting will now adjourn for the conduct of the policy committees. I will call on Councillor Whitten to chair the Planning and Development Policy Committee.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to open the Planning and Development Committee meeting on the 2nd of August 2022, with the time being approximately 6:50. I understand there is one declaration of interest from Councillor Kinghorn in item 2.3. Thank you. I move on to section 2, item 2.1, items approved under delegated authority. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Duffy, seconded by Councillor Donald. Any discussion on this item? No discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Against? The motion is carried. You'll see that there's approximately around $7 million worth of revenue there in development applications, which is, I think the director told me that it's a bit down on normal times, but we are in different times. It's still a good number. Good to see Orange progressing. Item 2.2 is a development application DA 3462021 4633 Mitchell Highway. The motion is printed on page 14.
I'll move the recommendation.
It's been moved by Councillor, sorry, I need to move your name, I apologise. Mallard, Councillor Mallard. It's hard when you've got flags here, I can't see names really.
Flags.
Yeah. Maybe I'm short. Do I have a seconder?
To be in the middle.
Councillor Tammy Greenhalgh. Any discussion on this item? Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Chairman, I'm going to speak against the recommendation to keep this tree. First of all, it's a pin oak and it's not native to the area. Also, I'd like to say when you talk about the streetscape, it's been hammered by the electrical company, Essential Energy, cut it to a certain way. But I noticed in the report it doesn't seem to address the issue of the next door neighbour, which is I think is owned by council, as regards to the electrical wires, which are only less than probably a metre and a half away underground. And there is acknowledgement there when you look at the report where it says there is damage to the footpath of the neighbour, but it's also of the residents, which is negligible, they say, but they do acknowledge that. And but I'd like to go back to mainly the streetscapes, actually, because, I mean, first of all, number one, you have to look at what the situation was, at what Lucknow looked like back 200 years ago before the mine started. It was absolutely annihilated. It was all dug up for gold. And when you look for gold, and when you look at the actual the area now behind the behind this actually property, there's about 6 or 7 holes that actually exist there already for the from excavation for gold mining. But I don't see this tree as any significance whatsoever. But also the significance to the actual owner of the place is it's specifically placed, as most early houses are set, where they get the sun on from the northern sun in the wintertime. Now, this tree actually blocks some of his living area of the actual residents, and I think he should be entitled to have that.
Councillor Duffy, any further speakers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Because I back to the applicant. My understanding, reading this, is by council writing to the applicant and on it. Bond. The applicant didn't respond by that date.
My understanding he didn't, but we'll get clarification from the director.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. The applicant has submitted a small bit of information which is attached to the report with the items with the coloured photos on them, but asked to provide the arborist details, and they haven't been provided.
Yes, more concerned about procedural fairness. Provide those reports to support. Of what we.
Thank you, Councillor Willetta. Any further speakers for or against? There being none, I'll put the motion. All in favour, please raise your hand. Against? 2 against. The motion is carried. Item 2.3, development application DA 4062021 267293 297 Ploughman's Lane. The recommendation is on page 49. Oh, sorry, Councillor Kinghorn. We'll just wait till Councillor Kinghorn leaves the room due to a conflict of interest. Righty. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Evans, and seconded by the Mayor, Councillor Hamling. Any discussion on this item?
Clarification. So the idea of the redesign of this was to protect the flying fox population that's there. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
So the idea is to keep them where they are. I'm just, Do we know what the interest level is of people who want to live? Flying fox population?
Okay, good question. There are conditions on the consent. It also falls out of so the applicant had to go away because they're an endangered species and get a specialist report, which they did do, and it made recommendations. It's also been assessed against our own management plan for flying foxes. There'll be a requirement that the subdivision of the land will have covenants on it, so restrictions on the title that highlight to any future owners that there's a flying fox colony nearby will or can it potentially impact how and when they know about it coming. So the whatever the complaint already highlighted to people moving into that area in order to address that.
So people who are going to purchase that land about this. Okay.
Any further speakers? Councillor Miletto.
Yeah, just to the director, with regards to subdivision, are you able to indicate located in that area?
How many detention ponds would be installed, do you mean? They are retaining the dam that's there, so we've been able to paint that. In terms of on-site detention, I'm not aware of that they're having to put more into it. There is certainly to the south end of the subdivision, or drainage line comes down from the main estate of Ploughman's Hill, south of this site. There's not subdivision detention ponds installed beyond the dam that's existing.
Thank you, because my understanding is with flying foxes that they normally inhabit areas where there is water. The reason I'm assuming has been dedicated an area of protection, is that correct?
Yes, that's true. Yeah, correct. With the dam there, so they can drink if they need to.
Thank you.
Councillor Evans.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Just in regards to the floodplain management, I understand it's running right along the side of Ploughman's Lane Creek. In regards to mitigating that risk, are we requiring the residential buildings to be built above the flood risk level? Will that properly?
Chair, thank you. Yes, under our subdivision drainage code, new residential blocks have to be have a level above the flood level. So there is a condition of consent that requires the level of the land to come up. That's also done in conjunction to answer one of the comments of Mr. Smith. For a resources regulator, we've been engaged with during this assessment process. We got their feedback and their conditions as part of the approval. It does allow for the proximity to the creek and also the flooding.
All righty. Any further speakers? Councillor Mallard. See, I'm in the groove now, Councillor Mallard.
The director sits down. Just wanted to ask a couple of questions. I noticed the report in covering the submissions. I think it covered the first submission that was made by somebody else pretty well, but I don't know that it addressed all of the items that, as Smith acknowledged, he made a submission, and particularly things relating to like the argument that the least number of trees, both native and exotic, should be removed. I'm guessing that the answer to that is that we really don't have instruments that we could enforce the protection of those trees at the current time. Would that be?
There's a small number of native trees. Most of it are the twisted willows, tortured willows that are in there, so the exotics that are quite extreme for the natural environment anyway on the aquatic side. We have looked at them. Development's generally in accordance with the master plan that's been in place for many years on that site, so certainly not a lot we can do there. We've been able to negotiate with the owner to actually give council a fair bit of more open space land. So that's a good result for the council and the community there. So there's actually some good open space there that With time can be embellished, but there is retention of a fair few trees. There's a few come out with the subdivision, but it's a pretty reasonable balance.
And yeah, I did want to acknowledge the I'd seen the earlier version of this DA, and I'm well aware of the changes that have been made, and I think that public space looks like it'll be good. I did have one question in relation to the protection of the flying fox camp, and that's that application explains that the trees on the west side of the dam, which are used as a refuge when they get disturbed from noise near the road, will be going. And I know there's going to be replacement planting to embellish that area and add more habitat for them. But I'm wondering, is there a mechanism that we retain those trees until a later point when have provided more habitat?
The signs of what, with the assessment that has been done, signs in those trees, they're not used a lot. The benefit of their removal is that it encourages the concentration of the box back into the main trees. That's the whole reason for it. So they've still got the dam to fly down to and grab a drink if they need to. But it's making a slight buffer between them and the house. Yes, we could talk to the applicant and ask them about their program of development of that. It's not going to be critical because it's in an open space area when they go, but it's more that ongoing buffering system so we don't get that conflict between the houses and the colony. We can certainly take that offline and talk to them about when they might pull or remove those vegetation. They're not significant trees. I did have a look at it yesterday, so it's not going to change a lot, but we can have a look at that.
Alrighty, Councillor Miller.
Ask a clarification, please.
Certainly can. We've had no speakers for or against. We've just had lots of questions. So we're in the right direction.
Thank you. Just you indicated that there's going to be some torture willows planted there.
No, removed, sorry.
Oh, removed, sorry. That answers my question. Thank you.
Alrighty, no further speakers, questions. I'll put the motion. All in favour, raise your hand please. Against, the motion is carried. That brings still close, and I will ask or invite Councillor Tony Milletta to conduct the Employment and Economic Development Committee meeting, and the meeting is now closed at 7:05.
Want to get it? Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Whitten. I'd like to open the Employment and Economic Development Policy Committee meeting held today, 2nd of August 2022, the time now being 7:05 p.m. I don't think there are any conflicts of interest, peculiar or otherwise, in relation to this matter. If there are, could you please, as we go through, could you please let us know? You can go to item 2.1, minutes of the Economic Development Community Committee meeting held on the 13th of July 2022. There's a recommendation on page 5, a mover and a seconder, Councillor Duffy, and seconded by Councillor Floyd. Is there any discussion on this item?
Through you, Mr. Chair. There were, so page 19, there were questions about Airbnbs, and it was interesting to see that they do actually have to be registered. Otherwise, they're not allowed to advertise on the booking platforms. I thought that I understand that short-term rental accommodation is an important service for Orange because we do have a lot of tourists that come here. I was interested, though, that none of the questions asked about the rates that these businesses pay. They are businesses rather than residences, and I'm just curious if somebody can tell me whether they actually pay business rates or just residential rates.
Through you, Mr. Chair, my understanding is residential rates.
Chairman, if I may. I own an Airbnb, so I might declare an interest. Now we're discussing Airbnbs.
Thank you, Councillor Whitten. Do we have a director who can answer the councillor's questions, or we do need to take that on notice? We have a Director of Corporate and Commercial Services. Is Rob coming up?
That's my understanding. It is a residential rate. It's not a business rate for Airbnbs.
That's standard for councils as well?
My understanding is that's standard practice across New South Wales, current legislation.
Yeah. We obviously I chair that meeting, and I can tell you that we're doing a lot more work in that space with regard to where and hopefully we get a better understanding of Airbnb's future. Perhaps provide further information back to council about the stats, things like that. Thank you for your question. Yes, you can get Councillor Whitten if that's okay. Thanks, Councillor Whitten. Are there any further questions with regards to that recommendation or anything else there? There being none, I'll put the motion.
May I ask a question again? Has this item been voted on that I declared an interest in? I won't vote on it.
You can sit there, but you don't have to vote it's up to yourself. Thank you. Councillors, I'll put the motion. All for? All against? Declare the motion, and we'll ask Councillor Whitten to come back. Thank you, councillors. That concludes the Employment and Economic Development Policy Committee meeting, with the time now being 7:10 p.m. and I call on Councillor Evans to conduct the Infrastructure Policy Committee.
Good evening, councillors. Open the Infrastructure Policy Committee on the 2nd of August, the time being 7:08 p.m. Item 1.1, does anyone have any pecuniary interest that would like to declare the setting with items in this agenda? Being none. Item 2.2, the recommendation is on page 5. Information in the current works report.
I'll move the recommendation.
I'll have a seconder, please. I'll start with a question myself. Just in relation to Rutherford Road, I've noticed that I'm a developer, and we've noted that not even half its life expectancy before we're having to go in and do repairs. I'm just wondering who's then liable to fulfill those repairs. Like, does it come back on the ratepayer for works that didn't quite make the cut, or?
Yeah, very good question, and one, if I may take a little bit of latitude to explain. A road to reach its design life relies on good investigation, good design, good materials, and then good construction techniques. At that time, while all those things were done independently, there was no thorough checks on on that process. So at the moment, once I started in 2017, we implemented a process of doing a Benkelman beam test, which measures deflection of the finished road. And we don't allow the developer to walk away from that road until it's up to a certain standard. And by measuring the deflection, it picks up all those things that may have gone wrong. So whether the investigation wasn't quite as good as it could have been, whether the design wasn't quite as good as been, whether the materials weren't quite as good as they could have been, or whether the construction techniques weren't quite as good as they could have been. We always have had very solid construction checks around getting the compaction right, but if any one of those other things have gone wrong in the process, they will lead to an early failure mechanism.
So are we liable in the end to them?
We are, yeah. Generally, we apply a 12-month defects liability period on all roads, handed over to council by a developer.
Signed off as ours.
That's correct. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the items in Councillor McDonald?
Sorry, Mr. Director, just through you, Mr. Chair, question regarding footpaths. I've just noticed that great that we're renewing footpaths and we're putting new footpaths out. I'm just curious about the process in terms of some streets seem to be getting new footpaths even when they've got existing footpath on one side of the street, then have footpaths on both sides of the street, but we've still got plenty of streets that have no footpaths on either side. I'm just interested to know what the process is in prioritising those.
In some high-use areas, particularly adjacent to school areas or would feed into school areas or to the CBD area, we do prefer to put a footpath in on both sides of the road. And quite often we get a number of people present to council that they would like both sides of the road to have a footpath on as well. So, it doesn't always happen, so we do prioritise, but it is more around actual use and the demand.
In terms of so people who live in some of the subdivisions don't have footpaths, haven't had them for some areas. How are I'm getting comments from people saying, look, there's new footpaths going here. Got one on already here, but we're not getting any out in our area. So how could we, is it about us as councillors advocating for certain areas, or do people?
There's certainly any new subdivisions going forward. We've actually taken a contribution, or we asked for the developer to actually put those footpaths in. So we've either taken a contribution, we put the footpaths in after the houses are built, or which is the case for most of North Orange. And in Shirley, we're getting the developer to put them in as they go.
But most of West Orange, that alignment removed. So there's no footpath. That's my understanding.
There's been no contribution taken for West Orange.
Yes. So
no one's actually paid. So I'm happy to take that offline. There is a mechanism under the Local Government Act for if we're talking about wholesale new footpaths, to actually charge 50% of the cost to the landowner, which would be a more equitable way in that all of the new subdivisions, those people that have bought into those have actually paid for their footpaths.
I don't know that will be a very popular idea. Thank you. I'll talk about it more.
There's a limited budget for new footpaths.
I understand that.
But happy to take that conversation offline. Thank you.
So Duffy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to acknowledge the fact that we are on some of those double-sided footpaths there, especially in Bing Street there. When you go up towards St Mary's School, you'll notice there, when you go up there, I must have went and had a look, because it's virtually bare on the left-hand side from Spring Street through to Park Street, which is a good move and well overdue. But I do notice there's not much there on Elsham Avenue or Blessington Street, or even, for the matter of fact, in repairs to Glenroy Avenue up the top of the hill near Churchill. near the old church. That's probably a little bit disappointment, but that's something we might be able to address a little bit later on. But I do acknowledge the fact that there are some roads being done, which we've been looking for years, and especially that part of McLaughlin Street where we've got probably about $4 or $5 million worth of assets of council along that rough section road that probably depreciate a lot quicker than that.
You, Councillor Greenhouse.
So my question as well was around Rutherford Road. Obviously, it's very concerning that there's going to be nothing programmed for at least 5 years. So in the meantime, what happens there if that just keeps deteriorating? What's our backup plan?
We'll always maintain the road surface. So we'll fix potholes. We'll do some crack sealing occasionally for different areas if it's something that will extend the life of the pavement. But essentially, we have a limited amount of road funding. We'd like to have more and we'd like to do more. And so we have successfully lobbied state government through WIA and local government New South Wales. And for the last 2 years, we've received funding under fixing local roads, which is a like-for-like replacement, and where there's a co-contribution from state and from local that has seen us fast-track a number of roads through that process.
So just for the public's benefit, where are they able to view what a Condition 8 such means? Is that available to the public so they can
Absolutely.
understand?
Yep. So if any of the public are interested, they can jump onto Council's website, look at our asset management plans that will describe what Condition 8 is.
Thank you. Any other discussion, Councillor Kinghorn?
Being pedantic, I tried to ignore it, but I can't. Page 11, can we please correct the spelling of dual in relation to water services? Just because the difference between dual as in double and duel as in trying to shoot each other at dawn probably does matter. Thank you.
Well picked up.
Noted.
You're the one getting shot. You lose it. Just a comment through you, Mr. Chairman, is that going through a mini budget process, and this is the time when councillors can choose to shift money. So if you have a concern with roads, talk about shifting money. That thing is prioritised.
Any other comments? Now I'll put the motion. All in favour, raise your hand. Unanimous. Thanking you.
Thank you.
Close the meeting.
It's a matter of rising, Mr. Chairman.
Duffy.
Matter of rising, Mr. Chairman. I did receive a number of phone calls about an accident on Sunday night at Hill Street, between Hill Street and Casey Street. Towed away. And the residents there, just not one, but a number of them phoned me as regards to the speed that people travel up and down Hill Street in that section there. And it's not only the first time they've had vehicles towed away, it's been other accidents there as well. And I'm just wondering, can we take that to the Traffic Committee to organise either speed hump? I know that the council has put in pedestrian sort of safety thing there, but it doesn't seem to be doing the job what the local neighbourhood want. Police have been called to a number of accidents there. Have a committee and get a response. Something else about it.
I'd like to take that offline. Happy to talk to the Traffic Committee about the speeds and perhaps some additional enforcement along there. But personally, I'm against speed humps on through roads.
We get that mobile speed camera fellow, get him off Woodward Street up there where he's getting no one and put him up there on Hill Street. I think he'd make a little couple of dollars there, wouldn't he?
Thank you. If I can talk to that point, it raises a very good point. I attended a meeting with Transport for New South Wales today in Dubbo, and they were specifically talking about the speed cameras in roadworks. So at the moment, there's only the guidance speed cameras that will highlight what speed you're doing, but there's no enforcement. So there's a proposal being run past the Minister at the moment. If it's ticked off, that will see enforcement speed cameras being able to be installed on state roadworks, and I would imagine that will also flow onto local roads. So council may, at some stage in the future, have its own speed enforcement camera.
Thank you, Director. Any other matters arising?
Do we get the revenue? Do we get the revenue?
Yep. There being no other matters arising, I'll close the meeting at the time being 7:19. I'll hand over to Councillor Mallard to conduct environmental sustainability. Thank you.
Councillor Evans, I will open the Environmental Sustainability Policy Committee meeting on the 2nd of August with the time being 7:20 p.m. Item 1.1, does any councillor have a pecuniary interest, significant non-pecuniary interest or less than significant non-pecuniary interest in any matter listed for consideration at this meeting? So, conflicts of interest declared. I'll move to item 2.1, minutes of the Companion Animals Community Committee held on the 7th of July. There are recommendations on page 5. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Greenhalgh moved. Thank you, Councillor McDonnell. Is there any discussion on this item? Councillor Duffy.
Just on item 3.4 in the recommendation, I hope that's going to address the issue of cats, birds and all those stuff. A number of complaints about people, especially up in the Lone Pine area, up in Orange and Lone Pine Avenue area, where people have been feeding birds from trees and things off the gardens, and they get these cats running around and killing the birds. So I just wanted, I hope that has done something good. I think cats are probably a fantastic thing as a companion to someone if they look after them and keep them in their house, by all means. But when they let them outside and all they do is do damage. And I think something like 65 million birds are killed a year, if not more, as regards to what these cats do as damage. And just imagine what they're doing up around Mount Canobolas and out around the streets here. So just think, but let's hope something's addressed there. Maybe we should come back with something a little bit more infinite.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. The other speakers, Councillor Peterson.
Just a question on the last page about the desexing program. Can see there's a request for $10,000 for the further desexing. Remember reading in the newspaper that they were a bit unhappy with the uptake, and can see in the notes that it wasn't quite as popular as people had hoped for. You may not have an answer, but any sort of different strategy to try to advertise more to make this otherwise quite useful program even more taken up?
Yeah, I think we have talked about trying to promote the program more and publicise it. I'm thinking maybe if we can get some social media advertising, then that might be one way to try and reach an audience as well. But yeah, we did. So the program this time around was originally for cats and kittens. We did a bit of media around that. Then we tried for dogs and puppies as well. But yeah, it's definitely one that an incredibly important program. So it's one that we want to promote. Councillor Greenhalgh.
So it's just a question on how that works as well. So if you get a rescue cat or something from the vet, and the vet normally charge you to buy that pet, like you can get the desexing grant for that pet?
It's only for concession card holders, but the desexing program is run through an arrangement with one particular, the last program was, so it won't necessarily be, and most vets have already performed it and factored it into the price for those ones. But yeah, maybe it's something we can explore, whether we can make the program available as part of the adoption process.
Might be something like doing something like a dual promotion with Pet Barn or something like that, where they get a discount or something on their frequent feeder card, or something like that, thinking outside the box.
Yep, excellent idea. We can take some of those back to the committee. We've got a good bunch of committee members who are definitely keen on encouraging responsible pet ownership. Any other speakers on this item? No, then I will put the motion. All in favour, raise your hands. One against. Motion's carried.
Just have a matter arising, though, in relation to the off-leash areas. The one think you classify as being in Lombardy Way. The entrance to it for people and dogs is from the Escort Way. I know it's rained for 2 years, but you just can't get in and out. It's awful. So if they are going to do new ones, could they possibly take the drainage into account a bit better than they have there? Because you can't go in there.
Yeah, and that's already been discussed by the committee, that issue at that particular park, and that we do need to factor it in other places. And we talked about it in terms of looking at the options at Shirley in terms of the public space. Councillor Miletto.
Rising, Mr. Chair. I've been approached by a number of concerned citizens in regards to the lack of dog watering dishes or bowls at the base of bubblers throughout the city. The question is whether council is able to do an audit, council in parks, sporting fields and off-leash areas, of looking at future costings, whether we can have those installed. The people who contacted me were concerned that whilst some people were able to carry a bottle of water with them, a lot of elderly people who like to walk around these parks are on walking age, things like that, and unable to carry a bottle of water whilst exercising a dog as well. So I'm just wondering, councillors may be aware that there are bowls which fixed to the base of a bubbler, and when you turn the bubbler on, the water can actually go down and fill the bowl, base of the bubbler. I'm just wondering that would be something which costs for the future to have them. So we'd need to do an audit to ascertain how many would be required. Have a look at that and bring a report back to council, if possible, please.
Mr. Chair, yes, we can do that.
Thank you.
Matter arising, Mr. Chair. Regarding the Springs Walk up the back of the new Shirley estate, I was up there the other week and either I'm blind or I couldn't see any signage up there. I was just wondering if we could get some costings on perhaps some signage and maybe a bin and bag sort of set up up the back there where people walk their dogs.
Thank you. Any other matters arising? All right, well, thank you, councillors. That concludes the Environmental Sustainability Policy Committee meeting, with the time being 7:27, and I'll call on Councillor Duffy to conduct the Finance Policy Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Mallard, and I'll declare the Finance Policy Committee meeting open at 7:27 and ask for declarations of pecuniary interest, significant and non-pecuniary interests, and less than significant and non-pecuniary interests being none. Move on to item 2.1, which is event sponsorship application for consideration. There's a recommendation there for the Australian National Field Days. Moved by Councillor Hamling, seconded by Councillor
Greenhalgh, Chair.
Seconded by Councillor Greenhalgh. Any discussion on this?
Chair, a point of clarification. I know that when we had issues with COVID, may have been held over. Funding, etc. Was that money exhausted, or what happened there?
Are you aware? I reckon Rob's coming up to answer that question.
I guess my question is if it was held over, is it?
Through you, Mr. Chair. There's an application, I think it's about 2 years ago now, in regards to the same funding amount of $10,000. The application was made. There was a decision by council. However, the money was never given because COVID happened and the field days could not go ahead. So when we actually talked to the field days with this application, they asked if they could submit the previous one, and we said no, that a new application would have to be then done, and hence that's why it's at council here tonight for consideration.
Clarification.
Question through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Director. Is there where Gabon, is it a like-for-like contribution from Gabon?
I don't know. I'll have to take that on notice and ask that question. Yeah.
Any further questions?
I have one in relation to the field days thing. A lot of the amount seems to be allocated to giving us data, and it just seems like a lot of money to get a database of exhibitors' contact details is $6,000. ND demographics is $3,000. I wonder why that's so expensive. Or are we just paying for the right to have the data?
My understanding, and I can take that on notice for some further clarification, but the data is really important in regards to the grant acquittals and to hold the event. It is fairly expensive, but that costing wouldn't be anything unusual to do that, hence the support from Council to seek some assistance in those sorts of costs. Yeah.
Any further questions? Councillor Evans.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, just in regards to the council, the site fee of $1,200, would that be more of an in-kind donation? And if so, would it then not be deducted from the $100,000 we hold over for that fund?
I might just take that on notice. I understand it is a real cost, but I'll just take that on notice if that's okay and clarify that. Yes.
Councillor Whitten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, I'll speak in favour of the recommendation. I think we need to keep in mind the importance of the National Field Days to our economy. Big number, $10,000 is a lot of money. But the return that the community and the city reap from the advertisement and the visitors to this city is far more than $10,000. If we were to spend marketing money, bring people to our city, which we do, we spend marketing funds through different organisations, $10,000 is certainly a great investment. Such a grand event.
The speakers. I'd just like to make a comment too. I'm going to support the application. As Councillor Whitten said, they are something like 600-700 sites that are there. Most of them operate in Visit Orange, Stay in Orange. Some of them are overnight. As to our site, I've been to our site on a number of occasions, Orange City Council site. It promotes weeds and all those type of things. Our staff are out there. They're extremely helpful what actually goes on, not only to Orange and its surrounds. And it's previously we've also had a welcome on the night before the field day starts to the exhibitors and the senior executive of the Australian National Field Days. Now, whether that's in the case this year, I don't know. But I think, as Councillor Whitten says, the economic benefit far outweighs, in this case, the measly $10,000 that we're going to give away. Any further speakers? I'm going to put that recommendation. All those in favour, raise your hand. The vote is unanimous. We'll now move on to 2.2. Additional Teach, Learn, Grow application for funding, small donation grants.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that Council approves the application, if I can get a seconder.
Moved by Councillor Mallard, seconded by Councillor Arnold.
Thanks. And yeah, if I can just speak to it. And Roy, that's right.
Oh, got them everywhere.
Thanks. Sorry, I just want to thank the staff for getting the additional information, and I think $2,000 to give the volunteers their uniforms and cover the catering and transport so that they can come and provide tutoring and mentoring for kids at Glenroy Heights. I think it's a good cause and one that we should support. Thanks.
Councillor Meletta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question arising from that, I guess, is that when this initially raised, I asked Council if they would send a letter to the Minister for Education, alert them to the fact that there would be an apparent shortfall in a number of areas for the school. I'm just wondering whether a letter was sent.
Director.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I can advise that letter has been written and it has been sent to the Minister.
Any further discussion? Councillors, I will make the comment, and I'm going to support the recommendation simply because of what school it is, and I know that I don't know how active their P&F are, but I am more aware of the fact that we are starting to fund things that actually really belong to the state government. The more we cop up, the more they have a bit of a smile on their face. So but in that, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, raise your right arm. Unanimous. Call Councillor Hamling back in. Move on to any other matters arising. I have one matter that is arising. Some couple of months ago, Council moved a resolution about fees and charges for the Carl Sharp Centre. It's been brought to my attention that the ODCA has paid money to Council prior to that. Now, I'm a belief, and I've been brought to my attention also, that this money is not allowed to be collected, and they believe they're going towards the Office of Local Government with their complaint. I just wonder if we can have a report come back onto that situation as we go there.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we can do that.
Okay, any further business? In the case, I'll declare the policy committee closed at 7:36. Call on Councillor McDonald to chair the Service Policy Committee.
Councillor Duffy. I'd like to open the Services Policy Committee meeting of the 2nd of August, with the time being 7:36. Any council have any pecuniary interest of any variety to announce, declare? Nope, excellent. Okay, so recommendation on page 5 for item 2.1, the minutes of the Community Safety and Crime Prevention Community Meeting held on the 23rd of May. Do I have a mover and a second? Thank you, Councillor Miletto. Thank you, Councillor Floyd. Any discussion on this item? No. Okay. I'll put the motion then. All those in favour, raise either your left or your right arm. Thank you.
I'll put both up.
Either or. Alrighty. That is unanimous. Item 2.2, recommendation on page 39 for the minutes of the NAIDOC Week Community Committee meeting held on the 2nd of June.
Move that recommendation.
Councillor Mallard, seconded by Councillor Hamling. Thank you. Any discussion? Nope. Excellent. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. It concludes the Services Policy Committee meeting at 7:37. I'm making really good.
Thanks, Councillor McDonald. The council meeting, there being no other policy committee matters, the council meeting will now resume. Notice is a motion 4.1, Fleet Bus Initiative, moved by Councillor Evans. I have a seconder. Councillor Greenhalgh. Councillor Evans.
Speak to that if I could, Mr. Mayor.
You can, Jack. Mr. Councillor Evans, sorry.
Oh, mate, at least I get the names right. At least I forget them all together.
Sorry.
It's well known that local government is somewhat limited in what it can do to assist with the ongoing housing crisis. There are only so many levels to pull before it becomes a matter for the state. Now, the Fleet Bus Initiative is something I believe local government can assist with. I'd like to thank my friend Tony Healy for beginning the conversation in the community with local organisations and businesses. It's my pleasure to bring council to the table with this motion. Forming a working party, council can work with local stakeholders to identify any roadblocks, partners and funding opportunities to get this program off the ground. Thank the Director of Community Services, Mr. Maunder, for assisting in getting some figures on the rate of homelessness in Orange, which we estimate would be in the vicinity of about 200 people on any given night. Fleet Bus is by no means a long-term accommodation solution, but by its own definition a band-aid solution, focusing on getting people off the street tonight and assisting its users access long-term arrangements through our existing social services.
I might speak on the motion. Myself and Councillor Miletto and Councillor Kinghorn and Councillor Mallard were over at Homelessness Week, and over at the Refuge today with Housing Plus, and some of the stats and figures that they were telling us, and the need, for places for homelessness people to go. So I think this is a great idea to get a working party together, see what we can do, and it just gives another option. So, yeah, congratulations, Councillor Evans, on this motion. Any other speakers? Councillor Duffy.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just looking at the figures, this is only just asking for a report to come back with a thing. I fully support that 100%. But when you start talking about figures of if we have to provide $100,000 or $50,000, I'd be a little bit wary. But I have full support of the recommendation to bring more information to us to make an informed decision.
Thanks, Councillor Duffy. Councillor Peterson.
Only to say I certainly speak in favour of the resolution and getting a report. I'd be particularly interested to know about what proportion of the homeless are rough sleepers. Certainly being on the Vinnie's Night Van for a few years and with the AMS work, I think a good proportion will be people in somebody's home, perhaps in a very vulnerable and temporary living environment. It would be very interesting to find out if the sleep bus can be of use for them, the working party. So thank you for bringing it up.
Councillor, I'll go along the line. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the recommendation, and I was just sort of wanting to note that it'd be interesting with the working party to find out what options during the day there are, because I just noticed that the time that people would have access to the bus is strictly sort of sleep time, and just be curious to know what in other areas have been done with people's possessions during the day. And those sorts of things. But definitely, I think it's a fantastic idea, and hats off to you, Councillor, and to Tony Healy.
Councillor Greenhouse.
I'd just like to speak for the recommendation as well. I think it's great. And I think when we're looking at something as important as this, let's not let money be the barrier. I think there's plenty of businesses out there we could potentially form a partnership with, and with a working party that's out there, like, I'm confident, Jack, that you're going to be able to get this off the ground. So well done.
Councillor Whitten.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The comment in the community will be from some people that this is not really a role for council, but this is our community, this is our home. We are the leaders of the community. So, and yes, it is a responsibility of state and federal government, but we need to drive it and own it. Once we drive it and own it, it will get on their radar, and then we can start getting some attention from the state and the feds in the way of funding. Congratulations, Councillor Evans, for bringing it to council.
Councillor Miletto.
Thank you, Mr Chair. My question relates to point 1 regarding formulating a working party. I was wondering what is envisaged of who will make up that party. If people are interested, who would they contact? Interest in being part of that working party.
Yeah, certainly can. Councillor Evans.
Understanding is that Mr Healy's begun conversation with Rotary Daybreak and several other businesses, but I won't mention their names. I'm also working with my relationship with the Orange Business Chamber, who I believe the President is supportive, but we're going to wait for the board to see how much they'd like to get behind it. If they want to get in contact, I believe myself and Mr Healy will be putting our details out there to really get the ball rolling.
Okay, being no other speakers, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Unanimous. I'll move on to item 4.2, which is Inns for Blokes, moved by Councillor Greenhouse. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McDonald.
Okay, so you want me to speak to the motion?
Thank you.
This is one that came up at a conference that we attended, and I'd like to thank the council staff for bringing back the information and making us see this in local terms. There's lots of links to incontinence, which can be prostate problems, cancer, a high BMI, diabetes and cardiovascular disease, intellectual and physical disabilities, and of course, elderly residents. So I think, our community strategic plan states, that we do want to be more inclusive. So I think it's only natural that, we be innovators and lead the way in our area, and we look at installing these in our council area so that people can get out and participate in our beautiful community.
Any other speakers?
I just got a question to the budget side of the fence there. I noticed down at the bottom it says that to enact this motion, a budget submission must be made.
Through you, Mr Chair, yes, we'd have to bring that back to council.
Okay.
Will that come back for the quarterly review?
Yes. Mr Chair.
Councillor Kinghorn.
I'd just like to point out with incontinence, it's not really a very sexy topic, but the idea of doing something like this and getting it out there is good because it normalises it and it makes people feel a bit more confident about them. Good one.
Thanks, Councillor Kinghorn. Councillor Mallard.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. And thanks, Councillor Greenhalgh, for bringing the motion. And I think there's a lot of great information already about the case for it in terms of incontinence. I did want to comment on a couple of other things that I see in terms of it being a good idea, one of which is in terms of environmental issues and issues for our sewer infrastructure, that basically without bins, if there are people who, sanitary bins, if there are people who have things, and it can be not just about incontinence products, but about if they've got medical conditions that they need to some non-biodegradable material while they're in a public bathroom and likely to go down the toilet. And so if we can prevent things being flushed, then hopefully we're avoiding some risks there. And the other thing that I think is important about this, and I know there've been campaigns making this case in other countries as well. I found one in the UK that's called In With the Bins, is that this is also helpful in terms of trans inclusivity. If you've got trans men or non-binary people who have periods but are using the male toilets, then it's good for them as well. So it's avoiding they feel they have to go and use the women's toilets. So I think they're all great ideas. Going to that question about the quarterly budget review, then, does that mean that should we be feeding this into the mini budget process? I'm sort of aware we're having mini budget discussions about what money's being allocated to things. We've got a couple of motions tonight that involve committing more money. So should we just be, if we're supporting this, is that it goes into the mini budget?
Through you, Mr Chair, we do need to bring back a couple of those funding options. We're doing some further investigation at how we might fund some of the initiatives. So we will need to bring that back to council.
Okay, councillors, no other speakers. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Unanimous. I'll move on to item 4.3, which is recognition of Wiradjuri country. Councillor Power.
I'll second the motion.
Second by Councillor Mallard.
Just as a point of clarification, can we separate these two, 1 and 2?
To the movers, would you like to separate and do one at a time?
Happy to do that, Dave.
Seconder?
Mr Mayor.
Happy to do that? Yep, okay. So the first one, Councillor Power.
Yeah, the first one is about, it's already been on the, service already. Open forum. Yeah, no, it's already in place there. So just having that Wiradjuri country on the address of all documents going out from within Orange City Council.
Councillor Duffy.
Yeah, Mayor, I fully support this one here. It's an acknowledgement in itself, and address it's acknowledged right throughout most of the areas in New South Wales as well.
Right.
I cannot see any reason why we shouldn't be doing it.
Councillor Miletto.
Chair, I'd like to make an amendment to the motion. That be that the both matters be deferred for the.
Yep.
With regards to the changing the address name, I support both these items in principle. When you look at changing addresses on stationery or envelopes, things like that, it's going to require a phasing in period. So that's something which needs to be budgeted for, because I'm assuming the council would have purchased a lot of envelope stuff like that, which I'm assuming it would be more cost effective to exhaust that before we look at changing those envelopes, etc. With regard to the naming of Mount Canobolas,
I'll deal with
one at a
I'm
time.
asking for both, or do you just want to?
I'll do
Okay.
them separately. Yeah. Do you want to say something about that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have discussed how we might do this, and the intent would be to utilise the existing printed stationery, and then as any new stationery was required, that it would include naming convention. Do a significant amount of our correspondence electronically, and so we could incorporate change to that immediately without cost to council. There would be a small administrative cost if we were to adopt that. The naming strategy in all of our emails is an automated function. That can certainly occur as well. So really a minimal cost to council to implement, utilise the existing stationery, but move on the electronic immediately.
I don't want to defer it. Now that's been explained to me, I'm happy with the motion the way it is.
We'll go to the next bit.
Thank you.
So Whitten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm fully supportive of this motion. Having Wiradjuri country placed on all of council's letterhead. Reconciliation is not about words, it's about actions. And Orange has lately been leading the way with our reconciliation and working with the Land Council. And the sporting facility and precinct is one. We were the first council to negotiate and work with a land council to work through changing lands and ownership. So Wiradjuri country, a beautiful name, and we are all very proud to live in Wiradjuri country. I'm fully supportive of it.
Councillor Kinghorn.
You. Uncle Neil pointed out that it was a goodwill gesture, and it is, but it's a small gesture that can make lots of people happy, and of course we should be doing it. It's a no-brainer for me.
Thank you. Councillor Mallard.
Thanks. Yeah, and I'm also obviously speaking in support of the motion. I want to thank Uncle Neil for coming and speaking to us tonight, and Ewan as well for his communications with us in support and alliance on this. I think the change in my lifetime to the amount of education and understanding about the history of this continent has been huge. And I think the acknowledgement of country being built into things has been really positive. The way the ABC is doing it now in all of their television and radio broadcasting as well, it's really important for moving us towards talking about the truth. And we're going to be the process that the federal government has now begun in terms of the Uluru Statement from the Heart. It's not just a constitutional amendment, it's going to be about truth-telling as well. And I think really taking this one little step, as people have said, but it's a very easy one, but it's going to be a positive one as well.
Thank you. Any other speakers? No other speakers. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Unanimous. I'll move on to item 2. I'll read out the motion. The council determine whether it provides its support on dual naming of Mount Canobolas to include its name of Wiradjuri language of Gunnabulla should an application be lodged to the Geographical Names Board by OLALC. I have a mover. Moved by Councillor Evans. Seconded by Councillor Greenhalgh. Councillor Miletto.
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion, recommendation. That is,
Sorry. You'd already moved the motion, so you're the mover of the motion. Councillor Mallard seconded. So I'll just for due process, I put the motion again. So it had already been moved by them too. Councillor Miletto.
Thank you. For recommendation is for deferment on this point number 2. I certainly support in principle the renaming or the dual naming as explained in the recommendation or the motion. I ask for the recommendation is, in my opinion, I believe that this shouldn't just be a decision for council. It should be a decision for the community of Orange overall. And when we looked at the Northern Distributor, renaming of that, we went out to consultation of public, you put it on exhibition. I believe that a decision as important as this, whilst I support it personally, I'd like to see this item put on public exhibition to give the whole community the opportunity to have their say. Because as councillors, we do represent the community. Also, I believe that to make that decision here tonight fails to incorporate those discussions or that consultation between Orange City Council and Cabonne Council. Whilst we may have a view, it still will have to go to Cabonne Council, I'm assuming, because it is in their LGA.
Well, I'm just going to get a seconder. A seconder for an amendment?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Yeah, okay, sorry, Councillor Letter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For those reasons, like I said, I support the idea in principle, but I do personally believe that it's a decision which could be made by the community of Orange and not just councillors, based on the fact that a precedent previously with regards to the naming of the renaming the Northern Distributor, and that required public consultation, and I believe this is something similar.
Mr. Mayor, can I?
Hang on. Are you speaking for the amendment or against?
Against the amendment and for the motion, Mr.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Whitten.
I'm speaking for the motion. This motion is to support the application that has already gone in, and it will not be a decision of this council whether the naming is changed. It will be a decision of the Geographical Naming Board. They will then probably, I should imagine, Mr. Mayor, put it out for submissions, comment. This motion is to simply say that we as a council support the application. That has already been put in. We're not. It won't be us who changes the name. It'll be the Geographical Names Board, and they will ask the public whether they want it or not.
Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While I'm fully supportive of probably the name change as well, I have concerns not only the fact that we probably should have more consultation, but we're not. It doesn't come out of our jurisdiction on the Cabonne Council. Do we have a letter from Cabonne Council supporting it? Do we have a letter from the National Parks and Wildlife supporting it? I don't know. I wouldn't like to someone else come and shove their nose in my business. That's all I'm saying. I said I'm quite happy to support it. I'm probably looking also for a deferral until we get such support from the people who actually look after it.
You're speaking for the amendment?
Speaking for the amendment, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor McDonald.
Yeah, I'm speaking against.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, Councillor.
No. Good.
Finish.
Finish, Councillor Duffy?
I'll finish now, yep.
Thank you. Councillor McDonald.
Against the amendment and for the original motion. Look, I completely disagree with Councillor Miletto's comparing it to the NDR. Gunnabulla has been Gunnabulla for tens of thousands of years. The NDR is only a recent construction. So it's not really a like-for-like comparison. And as Councillor Whitten said, it's about providing our support for the application, saying that we support our First Nations peoples, and that we accept that this is what they want to call and what they always have called Mount Canobolas. So I absolutely wholeheartedly support the original motion.
Councillor Mallard.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm also speaking against the amendment and in support of the original motion. Look, I think this is an opportunity. While community consultation is important, I think leadership's important as well. And in this situation, we've got an opportunity to take the lead in listening to the wishes of the First Nations community, and I place their wishes much higher than Cabonne Council's in what we call the mountain that they've such so many thousands of years. So yeah, I fully support. Let's put in our support for the application for the dual naming. Dual naming has been adopted in a whole bunch of other places, as was pointed out. We're already using Wiradjuri language in the names of a number of the public facilities around the city. I think, again, it's a really important acknowledgement can do very easily.
Thank you. Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I speak against the motion. And
The amendment.
The amendment, sorry. And for the motion, it's something that I ran on this, and I've been hearing it for years and years, and then speaking to Uncle Neil and the elders about inclusion, getting all this stuff together, especially when it echoes what Mr. Mallard said then in relation to the First Nations stories that has been echoed. This is a simple fact. And then the amount of input that I've had and interest and support from the wider community has been overwhelming. It's just been overwhelming. So even whatever, if you went to the other side, we would be back here saying, yep, let's just do it. It's as simple as that. There is a small voice out there, and everybody has an opportunity to have their voice. But what I've felt and the messages I've sent have just been overwhelming in relation to the motion that's been put up as the wording too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm actually quite keen for community engagement, but I think if we don't have the decision on what the council's named anyway, we'd be asking people for their feedback on something, then we wouldn't actually be doing anything with that feedback. The Geographical Names Board will probably make their decision regardless of any information we provide. So I don't want to, I guess, waste people's time asking them for feedback we'll do nothing about. Although I think the sentiment raised is a good one. I don't think there's anything to be gained by asking.
Want a clarification?
Yes, I do.
Councillor Maletta.
Clarifications with regards to comment that so come back on exhibition. I'm just make a decision for it does come back on exhibition. I'm not quite sure that is the correct process. Could I have clarification that is what does occur? And to Councillor McDonald's point that trying to a northern distributor to Canobolas, that was certainly not my intention to compare those two, the old and the new, so to speak. My comment was with regards to name changing, nothing else. Nothing to do with disrespecting. Because as I said from the start, I support name changing in principle, but I just felt the opportunity for further public consultation based on other things which are not on the age of anything.
Did you answer that question at all? Thanks.
Through you, Mr Chair, my understanding is that that is not part of the process of the Geographical Names Board, that they make a decision on what's put to them based on, but it's not a process that they conduct.
Councillor Evans.
Mr Chair, I'm of the view that not really a renaming or a changing of name, but rather a reinstatement of a name that's been around for a fair while. I believe that anyone that's ever been born or lived here has a strong connection to Gunabula or Mount Canobolas, and if a dual name is going to help enhance that connection for people, then I'm fully supportive.
Councillor Kinghorn.
Just have a question. My understanding was that Canobolas was an Indigenous name, and perhaps Councillor Power or Uncle Neil can clarify, is that just an anglicised version of Gunabula? Because it kind of sounds a little bit similar. Or, oh, okay.
We can't answer it. I don't. Many of us
outside. No.
Sorry, Councillor.
The Wiradjuri name.
Okay.
Sorry,
Okay.
Mr Chair.
Councillor Power can answer.
Yeah. The Wiradjuri name was always Gunabula. In relation to the story, as we read the aspects of the outlining of what this motion means, well, it has always been Gunabula. It's never been Mount Canobolas.
So where did Canobolas come from?
That's a question that would have to go back to those who, I suppose, like Thomas Mitchell named an orange. A lot of people didn't know that he named Orange and who actually named it after. So it's about that aspect of that story. Yeah. So, but it has and always was Gunabula in that stories for thousands and thousands of years.
They just do sound quite similar, so I was just curious as to whether somebody misheard it and wrote it down differently.
Yeah, that's okay.
Councillor Greenhalgh.
Look, I fully 100% support the original motion as well. I don't see any harm in having the dual name, and I think it's really important that children, you know, this is taught in our schools and so forth, and they understand the meaning behind these things. So, you know, I'm fully in support of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm speaking against the motion, not because I'm against it, actually, because it's simply because, and Councillor Whitten raised the issue that we had deep and meaningful consultation with the Orange Aboriginal Land Council virtually on a week-to-week basis for months and months and months and well over a year as regards to other land around the Orange area there. I haven't seen any consultation with council or any of this. I think that is probably my reason for saying that we should be waiting to see what actually Cabonne says, because they're the jurisdictions of what the actual happens. But we haven't seen any of that. We haven't seen any comment from the National Parks and
Orange.
So, Councillor Whitten.
There's some magpies in the
Councillor
room,
Whitten.
Mr. Mayor.
Have you finished?
Can you sort the magpies out?
Finished?
Well, I'll sort it out now, yes.
Thank you. There being no other speakers, I'll put the amendment. All in favour of the amendment? Against? The amendment's carried. That becomes the motion. Oh, sorry, amendment's lost. That becomes the motion. Sorry about that. All those in favour of the motion? Unanimous. I'll move on to 4.4, which is notice of motion, mental health.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's going to be a hard act to follow now, I'm sure. But
Have I got a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Greenhalgh.
yeah, Mr. Mayor, my motion just asks the council to facilitate the addition to its website of a mental health page that contains detailed list of mental health providers in the Orange LGA, including details of any services provided, emergency contact details, and details of nationally recognised bodies such as Beyond Blue, Headspace and Lifeline, and then to report to the Chamber with any costings and the viability of such an upgrade to the website. And just very brief background is mental health issues are a growing problem in all states and territories of Australia. And I just think as a council, we should be doing more about this. The council has a tag on its website called Live, which then leads to 4 further headers beyond that include health and safety. And I think in this area here, we could have a tag saying mental health awareness alongside our public health, our COVID-19 and our domestic violence names.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Absolutely speak in support of this. I agree with Councillor Floyd. Many of us know that the mental health crisis is just expanding. I think it's the more access people have to support, the better. I believe that the member for Orange put out a publication about mental health services. So I think most of that work information's already in one location, if that could help the staff. But absolutely in support of this.
Councillor Mileto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank the councillor motion. My question is in addition to the information which is before us in the motion, whether councillor would put a link beside the name to each of these mental health providers to create further awareness
to their website. Would you?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, that's a good idea. Yes, I'd support that for sure.
Seconder? Who was seconder? Happy with that? Yep, beautiful.
Thank you.
Councillor Whitten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I spoke to the CEO with regard to this. I just want to make for the public record that I sit on, I'm a founding director of Marathon Health who oversees the Headspaces, but because this is, we're just putting a website and there's no advantage to me or that organisation, that I could stay in the room.
Councillor Duffy. Yeah, keep going. He's going to say something.
Something to say, Councillor Duff?
No, keep going, please,
Do you
councillors.
want me to repeat it?
Keep going, councillors,
I've
please.
already said it.
Wonderful idea, Councillor Floyd. We can't do enough. The more attention we raise with this and give people access to information that's going to assist them. More power to you, mate. It's a great idea, and certainly Councillor Miletto putting a link to those others to the actual site themselves means that the individuals can contact them directly, even over a chat on their website. So fully supportive of both items in motion.
Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, and thanks, Councillor Floyd, for raising this. A suggestion and a comment. Suggestion being when you have the information, perhaps the information about the cost as well. Certainly, as from a doctor point of view, that's a big barrier for a lot of the mental health services, particularly psychology and psychiatry. So if it is bulk billed or not, if that was clear from the start, would be helpful. And the comment would be trying to keep track of this myself in general practice days. Keeping up to date was hard work. So it's a question for maybe council staff as to who has the relatively luckless job of trying to keep up to date with all of the with these resources.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I am aware that the PHN is also doing some broader work in this area and compiling a detailed listing of mental health services that are I only found this out today, that are mental health services across New South Wales, so that people, irrespective of where they live, will be able to access some detail around what the services are, what they provide, whether they're bulk billed or not, and that there's a mechanism within that body of work for the updating of those details, because that's exactly the problem. You pull this information together and 3 months later it's out of date. We can certainly do this. That work's not complete yet. There's a test site now, and there's easily and then link to that site as and when it's developed. So we'd look to the bodies to update their details, because you're right, Councillor, it is less task in updating and making sure it's current.
Thank you. Councillor Mallard.
Thanks. Yeah, Councillor Peterson's questions just went to where my thinking was as well, having worked in a community mental health organisation a few years ago on a project that was basically attempting to pull together this sort of resource. Yeah, finding what's out there, and then the fact that things change, NGOs are changing their names all over the place, government funding comes and goes, programs change, so yeah, a lot of complexity. I definitely support the principle of it. If we can get this, if it's ideally, a link to where you can find the resources, might be that other people are doing the work. But yeah, support the motion and attempting to find the best way to do this. I was going to say, as well as the PHN, I know, like when I was working at Like Mind, it was the local health district as well. We're looking at pulling together their records of what ran, but even their website wasn't up to date with what was open and operating anymore. So yeah, it's a very fast moving space. Thanks.
So Greenhouse.
I'd just like to thank Councillor Floyd for bringing this forward. There's not one of us in this room that doesn't have a mental health cup, so I think it's really important that everyone manage their mental health. I was very fortunate enough with the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor. We attended a Beyond Blue fundraiser here in Orange on the weekend where everyone dressed up as drag. What a fantastic evening. We raised up to about $24,000. So I think that's just goes to show how important mental health is for our community. So, and I think it's important too that, our partnership with the community and the youth, I think it's really important we start building that relationship with the youth so they know where to go and find services and stuff as well. So, well done. Thanks for bringing this to the table.
Councillor Duffy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an absolute no-brainer. I mean, the only probably disappointment to me is that it's never come forward a lot earlier through some of our committees, through health committees, those type of things there. But I want to thank Councillor McDonald for raising the fact that the local member brought it up as well. I'll only give him a half pat on the head because I don't want his head to get too big. So that's what it is. Was his daughter on the bus?
No other speakers. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Unanimous. I'll move on to item 4.5, which is notice of motion, Wi-Fi in the CBD.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And my motion was that Council be provided with a report to the costs and feasibility of free Wi-Fi being made available.
I'll second that.
Well, thank you. This was just in response to the suggestion from the Youth Action Committee from last meeting, talking about the safety benefit, but I think there may be an economic benefit. Very much grateful for the staff comment, which had talked about some areas where it could be economically done and some areas where it could not be economically done. Happy to hear more information from them in due course.
So just remember that the motion is that a report comes back to us. So we can have a bit of a discussion about it then. But did you want to say anything, Councillor McDonald?
Oh, yes, I just support the motion, but I think it's also important that the report looks further afield than just Bathurst, which is mentioned in here. But I think
Councillor Miletto.
Thank you. I support the notice of motion. I just have a question. I'm just wondering whether council's abilities or whatever, we provide Wi-Fi, how we promote these amongst the community of Orange and any youth who may want to access it whilst a decision is being made. Is something on the Orange City Council website, or is that information available there where these people can just access and say, well, okay, I can go there and get Wi-Fi?
Question. Rob? And we've got to remember while she's walking up to the lectern, the phone boxes now have free Wi-Fi.
It's a phone box.
So there's one down the bottom there.
They still have those?
Phone calls too.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is information in our building. So, for example, if you go to the library, there is some signage and some information to say that you can use the Wi-Fi. However, when we looked at the paper, we did have a look at how we were promoting that, and we do think we probably could do more to let people know where you can access the Wi-Fi, and even to know if you're outside, for example, the library, and you're on that spillover area. I think there's more work to be done about promotion and information.
Councillor Evans.
Mr. Mayor, I just think it's worth noting when the report comes back, the number of businesses in the Central Business District that offer free Wi-Fi to their patrons, whether it be retail, hospitality, or professional services. If we do find eventually that maybe the cost is too high or we need to cut costs some places, and it could be worth promoting who's already offering that sort of service.
Councillor Kinghorn.
Comment. We've just had a briefing on the proposed upgrades to Lord's Place South, and some of those structures in there will have power added to them. I'm just wondering if this can be taken into account. Might be able to talk about that, but I did notice on some of those that we were looking at, they've got charging points and power points. So they're saying the expense here is actually adding that infrastructure, but that will be happening anyway. So perhaps that's something to consider as well with this.
Agreeing about that. Any other speakers? Being no other speakers, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Unanimous. Item 4.6, which is notice of motion from Councillor Kinghorn, uninhibited government-owned residential dwellings.
Happy to second it.
Wow.
I'll fight you for it.
One's going to get up.
Councillor McDonald. Councillor Kinghorn.
And if this doesn't get up, but anyway, this is just the most obvious thing. We all know what an issue housing accessibility is at the moment. Got lots of things that we're talking about, but so many of them take a long time. So this is something that actually could be done in the short term, and obviously we would need the cooperation of the state government to do that. But finding out what's out there and what's possible means that we can agitate for that. So.
Councillor Duffy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a wonderful recommendation, and hopefully the mover and the seconder will add vacant land as well, because I think that's going to be a little bit more important when we come to another item a bit further in. I think we should know also what is vacant land when we state federal government to address our shortage of housing and social housing and those issues there.
So did you want to add vacant land as well, Councillor King?
I do think at the moment I'll just leave it the way it is because this is the only thing that can be done within a few months.
Yep.
It's a good idea and we can have a separate look at that later.
Councillor Mileto.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank Councillor Kinghorn for the issue within the committee regarding home. Councillor is a stickler, wondering the emotion indicates an audit on the number of government-owned residential dwellings. Wondering whether you would entertain the banding that where we could identify how many bedrooms, because obviously the demand for houses, families, greatest demands is for either single or couples. It may give us a better insight into what is out there if we can identify uninhabited properties, what they actually are rather than just a property per se.
Okay, so you mean to say that the number and type of uninhabited?
Is the seconder happy with that? Beautiful. Any other speakers?
I think the other thing might be as well, Mr Mayor, for them to include those residents that have been damaged that they regard as uninhabitable, right?
That's why I've got and seek to determine the reasons for the lack of occupancy, because some of them have been burnt out and some of them have got a lot of asbestos problems, but what we've got to work with.
They should be included because we may be able to.
Any other speakers? I'll speak. I think it's a fantastic motion, and I know in previous years many people have asked for this sort of thing and we never get the right answer. So hopefully with this one, a bit of pressure put on, we can do a complete audit of what is around, because we do know there's a lot of houses around that are boarded up and have got fences around them. So we need to get those houses, as we learnt today over at the refuge. It's a transitional. The refuge is supposed to be for emergency accommodation, and it's supposed to be for 3 months. Some residents have been there for 12 months because they can't move into these houses to move on from where they use emergency services like the refuge. So I commend you, and I'll put the motion. All in favour? Unanimous. To item 5.1, which is development application DA12.
Move the recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Wynne. Over seconder. Seconded by Councillor Mallard. Any speakers? Councillor Kinghorn.
This reading through the submissions, it seemed that the main issue that the residents of Kite Street had with this was the problem with the idea of a roller door rather than the existing gates. It looks like that's been addressed. So, okay, but I'm not sure whether everyone's happy with that, this Kite Street. So I was just curious as to whether feedback as to whether the mission's concerns had been adequately addressed.
Mr Hodges is moving to the lectern.
Just essentially whether the main problem was the roller door, and that's now gone. So that's enough to make everyone happy.
Through you, Mr Chair, you're certainly spot on right. That was the key issue with the original development application. We've taken on board the submissions made by the six, I think there were six neighbours. So and that's reflected in that consent condition. So it takes on board. It goes to the automatic gates, which is a good result. Keeps it open. The focus is not enough steel. We're in a heritage area.
Being no other speakers, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Unanimous. I'll move on to item 5.2, which is the local government conference.
Will you move it, Mr Chairman? And
I have a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Whitten.
Yeah, well, I'm going to speak about number 3 first. The council provides something there. I'm quite aware of the fact that the state government own 1,300 blocks of land out the south, and there's a reason why I asked the question about putting vacant land in there as well. It's about time the state government, I don't care which one who happens to get in March or whatever it is, to address the issue that belongs to them, which is social and affordable housing. I know that they use Housing Plus with Lantana Place and Pearl Court and all those there, but they're not built yet. They've been in the pipeline for some time. But we should be calling on local government in New South Wales to actually ask the state government and the federal government to step up to the mark and take their responsibility for the housing social issues that we have here. And it's not only the housing issues that we got here. You look at you saw on there that daycare's gone up $46. Rent's gone up $60. CS child support $51. Loans have gone up with the RB Reserve. It's not only that pressure; everything's gone up everywhere. And then you've got these other situations where fuel is absolutely enormous. You've got a 40.
Is this are you putting a? I'll do this. I'll do this.
I'm talking for a motion to go to.
Okay, so you're going to bring a motion back to council?
Oh, I think I'm bringing it now. We raised the issue here now, and we want it to go. And I'm giving you information of what should take.
So have you got a written motion?
I don't have a written motion, but I can easily get you one.
Yeah,
but the
that'd be
point
good.
is, it was asked here to raise issues that we want to do.
Fantastic.
Raise the issues. There's 1,300 blocks out there, which have been sitting out there for well over 10 years or more. I think about 10 years. And we've got heaps of block lands which Councillor Turner spoke about, and Councillor Turner was always aware of whose responsibility it is. And the federal government's the same. We've got to change the federal government. Maybe we might get some work there. But we definitely need something to go to the state conference with as regards to get them off their butts and do something. We've been talking about this not only this year or last year or the year before. We've been talking about it for years, and we've had the discussion about Lantana Place. We've had the discussion about Pearl Court and all those things through this thing. And council has had form on the board as regards to domestic violence, but the responsibility lies with the state and federal government, and we've got to make that very clear as to what are there. And there's plenty of things available here in this city for it to happen.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. So that would be one of the motions. So if you could put that in writing, so we can. So yep.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'd like to nominate to go to the conference, Mr Mayor, as a voting delegate. I'd like to nominate to go to the conference as a voting delegate.
I'll second that nomination, and I'd like to nominate as well.
I'll second that.
That's 2. Anyone else?
I'd like to go to this, if that's
Councillor
all right.
Kinghorn?
Yeah.
Seconded. That's 3 people.
I'd be interested in attending as well. I don't mind whether I'm a voting delegate.
That's 4. That's 5. Councillor Duffy, you're nominating? That's 6.
Anybody does want to go.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with 6 going, Mr Mayor. You need experience with new councillors to go to these conferences.
Okay.
I've got a motion already.
We've got the 6. 3 voting delegates.
I'd like to Councillor voting.
I already nominated and got seconded.
I don't know.
That's 2. That's 3. Am I a voting delegate? Okay, well, I'll see whether I attend or not. We've already got 6. Okay, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Carried. I'll move on to item 5.3, which is progress report on operational plan on page 107.
Do the recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Whitten, seconded. Councillor Floyd. Any speakers? There being no speakers, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Unanimous. Item 5.4 is register of delegations on page 211. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please?
Happy to move that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Whitten. Seconded. Councillor Evans. Councillor Duffy.
Mr Mayor, as I said, it's probably something we should go through with a bit of a fine-tooth comb, but what I am probably more aware that I'd like to think the CEO is reminding his staff as regards to they have some responsibility as to common sense and costings of things.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. No other speakers. I'll put the motion. Against? Watch that hand. I wouldn't want to see you in an auction. Move that. That's unanimous. And
$200,000 painting.
Item 5.5, which is on 231, waiving of fees, public amenity. I have a mover.
The recommendation.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I declare an interest as a member of Waratah Sports Club.
Are you on the board or anything? What?
I'll be right then.
Your
Yes,
choice.
that's
You can
choice.
move if you want. But I have a mover.
The recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Mallard. Seconder. Thanks, Councillor Greenhouse. Any speakers? There being no speakers, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Carried. Item number 6 is closed meeting. The Chief Executive Officer will advise the Council if any written submissions have been received relating to any item advertised for consideration by closed meeting of the Orange City Council.
Through you, Mr Chair, we've had no submissions.
Thank you. In accordance with the Local Government Act 1993 and Local Government General Regulation 2005, opinion of the Chief Executive Officer, the following business is of kind as referred in section 10A/2 of the Act and should be dealt with in a confidential session of the Council meeting closed to the press and public. The following items are classified confidential under the provision of section 10A2 of the Local Government Act 1993, which permits the meeting to be closed to the public for business relating to the following sections. 6.1, tenders for Clergate Road Upgrade Stage 2. Section C, information that would confer a commercial advantage on person to whom the council is conducting or proposing to conduct business. And item 6.2, submission redactions, 2nd of August. Section E, information that would be, if disclosed, prejudice the maintenance of law. Thank you.